Ladies and gentlemen, MrCropper here. A question from a viewer. He says, I'm personally struggling with motivation. I set up things to do, then I just end up evading. It applies to almost everything I don't have automatized. Alright. For one thing, Ayn Rand spent a lot of time just sitting around doing solitaire. So you can do some things that are repetitive, and when you're doing that, you go into a zombie mode and you escape. And it's kind of like daydreaming or going to sleep for a nap, or when you zone out driving to work and you're not conscious of yourself during that time. So we can't be conscious all the time. So there are going to be things that you do. Now, what you choose to do with your time, Leonard Peikoff goes over this in his talk on principles and how to apply them to stylizing your life. It's called Symbols versus Principles, if I remember correctly. For example, the type of coat that you wear. You can't use philosophy to choose the type of coat. It really doesn't matter what type of coat you wear. But you might want to choose a coat that looks more like your type of style. You know, if you're an intellectual and you have a job at a library and you're an objectivist, that might be one type of coat you wear. Whereas if you're an objectivist mechanic and you work on trucks and you rebuild car engines, you might have a different type of coat from the professor, but you're both objectivists. So your coat that you choose should stylize your choices in life. You can't use philosophy to say yes or no to a symbol. It's just a symbol. So your motivation, coming back now, circling back around to the question we start with, your motivation should be to improve your life, whatever it is. Now, you might have a pile of books you feel like you need to read, and my advice for books is read it if you can. And if you're falling asleep, close that book. There are too many books out there to worry about it. There's certainly a dozen other books you need to read that are sort of going to help you as much as or in the same way as whatever book you're trying to struggle through and you're bored with. So, same with videos. Same with, if you're bored learning about the Amazon and rainforest and stuff, then don't. Go learn about something else. There's no duty to learn whatever it is. Now, take that attitude and roll forward and learn the things you're interested in. I always avoided economics in the 1800s because I knew what the 1800s was. It was sweatshops, it was factories, women and children being paid pennies a day. I knew what that was, so I didn't, and it was very boring. My school didn't do a very good job of teaching me about this. So I said, what's this all about? I don't care about the 1800s. Meantime, I'm learning objectivism. And it turns out that the 1800s was the freest economic period in the history of mankind. The 1800s in the United States. Globally, partially as well, but in the United States particularly. Wow, well then I ought to know what went on in the 1800s, shouldn't I? So I started reading like a madman at some point. At some point, I became interested in the 1800s. I became motivated to learn about the 1800s because I had a reason. I had knowledge surrounding the 1800s. I knew capitalism's good, I knew freedom's good, I know America's good, but I didn't know about the 1800s. I didn't know about this period when they built railroads. Another funny thing, I liked railroads. Railroads were invented and expanded in the 1800s. I don't know anything about the 1800s. I knew about trains, but not the 1800s. Learning about the 1800s helped me learn even more about trains. So, your motivation is going to ultimately have to be improving your life. If you can make a larger project out of your motivation, fine. If you can't, then so be it. I mean, there are 7 billion people on the planet. Not everybody can be an objectivist who saves the planet, for example, as an objectivist I recently was speaking with, Gio from France, was worried about. He says he doesn't know if he can describe himself as objectivist because he doesn't do any great things like Howard Rourke or John Gall. But objectivists could just mean that you do a good job in your life for your happiness. That's all it really means. Now, if your life and your happiness happen to be connected to some larger picture and your actions have some meaning immediately to a larger field of people, fine. Like Ayn Rand was in that situation, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to end up on the stage. Certainly not. All right, so your motivation has to be not to become some Howard Rourke or John Galt of history, but to make yourself happy. So, number one, choose things you're interested in. Number two, learn about things that you can devour. And if you can't devour it, then go to something else. Just put that book aside. I have a stack of 6 books or more next to my bed at any given time, which I may not crack any of for months on end. If I'm busy or doing something else or whatever, I just might not read for months, and then I'll read a book in 3 days. So, if you're worried about reading or watching documentaries or whatever, watch, listen to, read the things you're interested in. Now, what was my list I was going on? Number 1, number 2. I'll just do a number 3. Your interest will grow over time, so don't try to plan something where this year I'm going to learn this, and next year I'm going to learn that, and the year after that I'm going to learn the other thing. 2 years from now or 1 year from now, your interests might change completely. So just learn as much as you can of the things before you. You're going to read, if you read a lot, you're going to read 2,000 books in your lifetime. If you read a lot. If you read way too much, you're going to read 5,000 books in your lifetime, okay? 100,000 books are published every year in the United States. So you're not going to read anywhere close to 5% of what's published in 1 year in the United States, okay? So you got to choose very carefully. And the way that I choose is if I am interested in it and I like and I'm reading it and I'm interested, then I read it. If it's boring, I don't read it. I put it down. That's how there's too many books. Now, if you ultimately use what I'm saying to sit around and play video games and watch reruns on TV because you're not interested at this moment in anything, then I would say you aren't taking seriously enough how important it is to have values. Sitting around playing video games and listening to reruns. Now, sitting around playing video games and listening to philosophy, that's at least a step in the right direction. But if you can't even bring yourself to do that, then I would say you're not ready for my advice. In order to take my advice, you have to give a damn about yourself and your life. If you want yourself and your life to improve, then you need to take seriously all the questions you have. What do you not understand? Like, for example, do you know what the Bill of Rights is? Like, the destruction of Nazi Germany, the defeat of Soviet Russia, the preservation of freedom in the modern world, all goes back to what the Founding Fathers did. Do you know what they did? If you don't, you should learn about that. Do you know about railroads? Railroads are the big thing in the last 200 years. Do you know that the plane, the train, and the automobile were all invented and developed in the 1800s? The airplane took off in 1903, so just a smidgen out of the 1800s. Everything we have is from the 1800s. Everything. Even rockets. Ancient types of rockets were around in the 1800s and in the 1700s. So we invented virtually nothing. Maybe electronics. That even came from the 1800s. They had the telegraph. We've done nothing. The 1800s is everything. What do you know about the 1800s? Okay, so there. I'm trying to motivate you. I'm trying to say, if you're serious about improving your life, there's lots of stuff to learn. Dive in and start learning whatever is interesting to you from a philosophical direction. You could read Bastiat on economics, Frederick Bastiat. Or from a more carnal direction, you could read The History of Railroads by some knucklehead who's never heard of philosophy. And I like both. I like to read Bastiat, and I like to read the history of railroads in, New England or whatever, by people who have no idea what philosophy is, and they just tell you about the history of just very boring history if you're not interested in it. So read what you're interested in. Watch what you're interested in. I'm talking here about education. So let me add, finally, this would be number 4 or 5 or whatever, I think number 4. Choose productive work that's meaningful to you. I somehow over the years have veered towards work where I get stuff voluntarily from people. The money that people hand me, they hand me directly and voluntarily to me. That's happened more, like, for example, just as a waiter. I would wait tables on Fridays and Saturday nights. I did that for years. And I make good money, and it takes a lot of effort to be a good waiter. You can't be a slow, lazy waiter and not get fired or get bad tips. So if you're going to get good tips, you have to be a good waiter. So I caused value in people's life and got money from them in that way. So choose productive work that you can believe in. For example, don't teach in the public schools. Choose productive work you can believe in and learn, educate, and grow. And I think that's going to do it. Let me just glance at his question again. He's struggling with motivation. He sets up things, then he ends up evading them. Jordan Peterson, let me mention last thing. Jordan Peterson said, you can't clean up your room and lose weight and get a job. But you can straighten up your bed and clean off your nightstand. Now, do that. Go do that, do that. And his point is, you can't do it all. All you can do is one thing. Every journey starts with one step, said the Chinese. And Jordan Peterson wants us to take that seriously. Every journey, including cleaning up your whole life and changing your life, starts with one step. Now, I don't know what you have in mind. Do you want to go to the gym or something like that? Is that what you're thinking? Mind, body, get yourself in shape, get smart. Whatever your goals are, I think understanding them helps. But really wanting them, and in other words, doing things because you want to do them, not because you feel like you should or you have a duty to do them. For example, reading or whatever. Doing things because you want to do them. That is important. That is a key. And productive work. Believe in the productive work that you do. Have I covered enough? I think I have. Let's leave it at that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the gentleman. I don't know his name. I don't even know a pseudonym to give him. Thank you for the question. See you on the interwebs. Please patronize MrCropper if you like what I do.